Welcome back into the second episode of Tribal Council Chat. We are your hosts. I'm Bruce Heller,
My name's Britt Parnell.
and let's dip our torches in the fire and get started. So, with this first segment last week, we talked a little bit about the 44 finale and Jam Jam's win. And Brett had a really good idea for the first segment this time, kind of riffing off of that and staying on the finale, sort of. So, I will let you take that away.
Thank you so much, Bruce. So basically, the first topic I wanted to talk about in regards to Modern Survivor is that we have seen now 4 seasons in a row that all finished with the exact same result,
Yeah.
being a winner to a single vote to a zero vote finalist, and then going back before the new era, we still see even many more seasons in a row with someone getting zero votes at the end. So I'm just want to start it off with what's your thought about how final has basically been the same result for the last 4 seasons, and how do you think that leads into the future of the show?
I think it's kind of weird and fluky that since this new era started and Probst has been really heavy with this is the new era, it's basically a new show at this point, game wise, that it's been the same vote every time. I don't know if it's entirely connected or there's something causing that to happen. I see a lot of like Survivor fans and online suggesting that the jury needs to be sequestered and kept apart from each other at Ponderosa, which I mean, lopsided votes have been happening forever. Why are we getting up in arms about it now? But it's definitely weird. I think it's a bit fluky. I don't, maybe there is something causing this to happen as a result of the new era. So I don't know.
Definitely agree with that point. I have seen that suggestion of the jury being individually sequestered. I don't know how personally one realistic that is, both economically, but also can you really want expect the jury to have no social interaction with anybody else
Yeah.
for weeks on end? Is that really fair to them as people? I would argue no, but I do think maybe we should maybe even look to the past and see what changes can be made to the future, looking at the Korong finale and what changed after that, especially in regards to juror questions. You might be able to really open it up to have some more different input as opposed to the jury seeming to have to unanimously agree on one specific winner.
Yeah. And honestly, and I thought about this the other day, all four of these seasons possibly could have been unanimous. Because if you look at 41, Deshaun was the one vote. He got his vote from Danny. They were like this the whole time. Um, Mike Turner was the one vote finalist in 42. Do you remember who that vote was? I'm drawing a blank. Let me look it up. But like this past season, Heidi got her one vote from Danny, and they were like this the whole time. So if it wasn't for these having these pairs that are so tight the whole time, these very well could have been unanimous votes even.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Probably I would say if I look back that like 43 would be the least likely to be a unanimous. It was probably always voting for Cassidy.
Yeah.
Mike got a vote from Jonathan. That makes perfect sense. The
Yeah,
two of them have
Jonathan, that's who it
obviously
was.
not only been close friends on the island, but have maintained that to this very day.
Yeah.
So, but definitely you saw Joe's be very in line with each other.
Yeah. The thing that confuses me is Carolyn a little bit because we look at the zero vote finalists with 41 we've read from exit press and seen everywhere that the jury and the players basically thought Xander was putting on this performance and show the whole time. They weren't sure how genuine he was being. And then in 42, we had Romeo as the zero vote finalist, too. I mean, I'm basing this off a 1 hour edit each week, but it really didn't seem like he did anything to me.
His
And
biggest move was made 20 minutes before in the final immunity challenge.
Yeah.
That was
And
an
then
impressive win.
43, we had Owen, who's a fun, likable guy, but I just don't really feel like he ever got going game-wise and really led any charges. So, like, with the first three
Owen and
zero-vote
Cassidy
finalists,
played so similar that she was always going to be the one that was challenging to win, even though she didn't get it in the end.
yeah, even with the first three zero-vote finalists of the new era, they're all basically prime bait for what you would think of as a zero-vote finalist, which is zero-vote finalists aren't new. This has been happening forever.
Exactly.
I'd have to look up when the first one was. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it was a lot of seasons ago.
Last season, where everybody got votes, was San Juan del Sur, and I mean, you're
Yeah,
gonna vote for your loved ones.
yeah. I
In
believe
any other season, Missy is probably a zero vote finalist there.
I believe the first unanimous one would have been Earl in 14.
That's right.
So like zero-vote finalists have been a thing forever. This isn't a new era thing. But I don't get why Carolyn is on this list. Like the other three, I can pretty much all explain it. But with her, like it seemed like she played really solid and played a decent
Well,
game. Like I still would have voted for
I
Jan to win, but I don't get how she doesn't get
yeah,
votes.
I kind of see Carolyn just trapped in that same boat as Michelle, that someone in her season played such a dominant game that it made it very difficult for her to get votes.
Yeah, true.
And
That winner's
Carolyn
at
played a
war.
great game, just like going back to that example. Pretty much everyone on the island says Michelle played an amazing game, but Tony's game was one of the best of all time in 40. Yam Yam played probably the best game of the new era.
That I love the final three of 40, honestly, though, because you can make an arc. Well, yeah, okay. So coming back from Edge, Natalie's kind of a bit of an case, but had she gone into fire and taken someone out, I believe you could have made an argument to vote for any of the three of them.
It's absolutely possible.
So, but yeah, Carolyn, it's just funny to me with Carolyn because the first three zero-vote finalists are all like prime candidates to be zero votes, and I thought she had a good chance to win going into that. Honestly, I thought any of the three of them could have taken it with 44.
I thought Eminem was going to win it, but I thought Carolyn would probably be like 1 or 2 votes short of him, and it just
Yeah,
didn't happen.
we haven't really had that close vote of the new, and really 40 wasn't that close if you think about how many jury members there were. Tony got 12 votes, I believe. So Natalie got a decent amount of votes, but wasn't that close. So
Wasn't close at all. Edge seasons are always like that.
like 4 votes sounds like a lot, but when there's that many jurors and the other person has 3 times as many
Yeah,
votes as you, it's not close. So like I would
exactly.
say the last close jury vote we've had was Tommy and Dean, I believe, in 39. So I don't know. I don't think it might be something causing this. The new era game is a lot faster. These players don't have the time
Yeah.
with the 26 days to strategize and flip plans as much. It kind of seems like the easy vote that used to never happen. When they would show the edit of what the obvious vote was, it never happened. And it just seems like that's happening more now. So maybe it's the
Yeah.
faster play that's leading to this.
To what you said about Fiji just a minute ago, and then going back in my mind all the way to Cagayan, what's your thoughts about potentially that we've never had a zero vote finalist in a final two?
I mean, I'd be open to it. One of my favorite seasons is Micronesia, and that was a final two. So
I think it's definitely something if I think would be nice to see back, because it would just make it a bit less predictable. You never know what
yeah,
you would be getting into at the end.
yeah, and then yeah, I would be open to the
See,
idea of a final two. That sounds fun. I don't know if they'll do it. Um,
probably not, but
there
if
was an
something
episode
that
of
people have seen discussed.
There was an episode of Probst's podcast, which On Fire with Jeff Probst. If you haven't listened to it, I would recommend it. If you're looking for something to listen to in addition to this podcast, because he shares a lot of cool behind the scenes stuff. But he did an episode going through, not necessarily some of them were controversial, but various twists, and he would go through and say if they had a chance of coming back, and he said they might go back to a final two, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong, but he didn't slam the door on it like he did with the hour. He ripped himself so hard for the hourglass. It was hilarious.
I have to listen to that.
It's great.
Um, so this was a great discussion on 44, but as I'm sure most of the audience knows, this is a historic week in the franchise
Yeah.
of Survivor. 23 years ago this week, I was a 7-year-old watching season one.
Wow.
And
I was a
that
baby.
way back, yeah, way back when it aired. So Bruce and I thought we would do a rewatch of The Marooning, season one, episode one, and watch it 23 years later and see how much the game's changed and what our takes are as super fans now. So what was your thoughts on that episode?
Well, partially, and this is partially because I've been rewatching 27 recently, which is the first Blood versus Water. And there's a scene early on, I want to say it's like day 5 or something, but Tina says, I've played more in X number of days. I'm not going to say a number because I don't want to be wrong. But she said, I've played more in this number of days than I played in my whole season in Australian Outback. And it's true. Like, just seeing
It's absolutely true.
what the pace of gameplay was for the premiere episode of the series compared to not only the new era and what we just finished, but even like the 30s. It's sped up so much.
It was neat because I watched the DVD version as opposed to the Paramount Plus version being in Canada. We don't go back that far, sadly, anymore. But one of the things that I was watching that was neat is they have an audio commentary, and Probst, Hatch, Rudy, and Jervis all recorded this right after the filming of All Stars. So it's going back that far.
Oh
And
wow.
even back then, Jeff has a line in the audio commentary where he says, "You guys were teaching us how to play the game." Whereas today, I know what I'm doing and I'm much more involved. And I'm like, that was in season 9. And
Yeah.
now we've seen how much the game has evolved from now Vanuatu looks like the old school game back to what no one that was really
Yeah.
slow compared to the modern game and especially the new era game.
Well, especially the new era, but even going back to 40, we saw Ethan, who hadn't played since All Stars in season 8, talk about the game and how fast it had sped up.
Oh yeah. Seeing that clip on season 4, The Edge of Extinction, with seeing Ethan and Harvey bonding over the experience of being out there in the new game is one of the best that we've seen in
Yeah.
years.
That tribe, Sele was such a cool tribe.
It was.
So
If you
what?
all didn't notice, that's where the background in the photo comes from. Mine and Bruce's favorite tribe of all time.
Yep. So what was some of your observations from this episode?
So my first observation that I hit within 10 seconds and really not directly related to the game, but just something neat is as I mentioned to all of you guys last week, I'm in the travel business. That's what I do for a living. Why I'm a big Michelle fan, big Sydney fan. And um I remember being like 7, and the first time I saw the world outside of Canada or USA was the voice of Jeff Probst saying, "In this tiny Malaysian fishing village, 16 Americans are about to begin the adventure of a lifetime."
Oh yeah,
And I
that's
really
great.
feel like that moment in the first 30 seconds of Survivor has not only developed my love of this game and of now podcasting with you and watching it for 23 years, but it's also really contributed, as I mentioned once in an audition video, to a big passion in my life that's exploring the whole world. And
Yeah.
Survivor really opened me up to that.
And look what it launched too, as far as the reality competition genre, because most of these shows weren't out yet. I think Real World and Road Rules might have been out.
Yeah,
I'm not
Real World
sure.
and Road Rules just started, and the challenge was like into one season so far. But Survivor came before Amazing Race, before Big Brother. In
Yeah.
fact, I have a quote here that I wrote down. Let me just find it. from Jeff. Oh, here it is. It was that about 10 minutes into the episode when you see Rich and Sue interacting on whether you should be working or discussing plans. Patch is up in the tree in that position of power. Sue's out there trying to improve the camp. And Jeff says, we watched that clip 50 times and now said we had a show. Nowadays, reality is everywhere. But back then, you didn't have a 50-year-old corporate trainer from Connecticut interacting on television with a female truck driver from Wisconsin.
Yeah. And
it's like that has changed not only television, but really entertainment for our generation. It was back. This was on coming from something I watched with politics at one point, but it was like somebody mentioned I think it was in a political science class I took, that back in World War II, they had radio, and then they had movies, and then they had home televisions, and our generation has reality TV.
yeah. And also something else that stuck out to me is just looking at what happened with old school Survivor after that season. And for future reference of the listeners, the way I divided my head is just kind of evenly. Old school is the first 20, new school is the second 20, and then new era is its own weird little thing after that. It doesn't entirely feel, I still love it, but it doesn't feel like the same game a lot of the time. But I mean, old school Survivor, especially the first 10, was very heavy on like honor. And there, if somebody was cocky or arrogant, annoyed people, they got voted out. There wasn't this strategy they have now of taking someone to the end, knowing they won't get jury votes.
Exactly.
And just to see Richard Hatch standing in a tree saying, I'm gonna win. I already have the $1 million check written out. I have no idea how he got to the end. The way old school Survivor was. Just
yeah.
And got the votes to win too, being that cocky. Because he was cocky like that the whole time.
Oh yeah.
So
it changed even on All Stars.
Yeah. Can't believe he punched a shark. It was
interesting though too that you bring up the old school game and how it's changed a bit and went through all different eras. But I wrote down a quote, which to me this is a quote that I wanted to read off, probably in my top 5 favorite quotes in the show. It's not only one that I've used for explaining Survivor to people, but it's also a quote that I've put up in presentations when I'm training community leaders, when I'm training people to be political volunteers, to be campus politicians. And that's Rudy Bosch saying, I've got to fit in, not them. There's more of them than there is of me. And that is the one part of Survivor that will never change. Everybody has to play their own part within their tribe, but at the end, you still have to fit into your tribe, get to the end, and get the votes to win.
Yeah. And quick correction, I said that when you mentioned All Stars, I just said I can't believe he punched a shark on All Stars. I'm pretty sure he bit a shark, actually.
The shark bit him, and he bit the shark back.
Great quote right there. It bit me, so I bit it back. So
I'm sure we'll talk about All Stars on another episode because that was a great season.
Yeah, I like it better than most people do. A lot of people aren't fans, and that's why they don't like it, because it's very heavy on him. But it's a fun little season with a couple dark spots.
I was it was like, to me, I was a Rudy fan in elementary school, then a Rob fan in high school, then a Michelle fan in university. So I've gone through the eras that way.
Yeah, for sure. And I binged most of the show I almost called it the plague, because that's what I jokingly call it most of the time. But through COVID, since we're on the podcast, I binged most of them through there between 40 and 41, and not even watching in order. For some reason, I was just kind of bouncing around to whatever season I felt like watching. But something else from the Borneo premiere is this challenge was fun. Let me pull up what Wikipedia has for the description of this challenge. The tribes were tasked with guiding a lit raft through shallow water, and upon reaching the shore, they must carry the raft above land to the finish line. Along the way are a number of torches that must be lit with the raft's fire, culminating in a final bowl in
Challenge
front of
that's
a massive bamboo statue that must be set ablaze. This was fun. Like,
was.
and I'm
And
pretty sure.
another challenge too that was used to an extent, depend with a bit of variations in Australia and then again in All Stars.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure you and me have probably texted about this at some point, but like, and this isn't necessarily a new era thing. This is kind of later new school also. I feel like all these challenges are most of them feel like the same thing to me. They'll throw last gasp in there once a season, which is always fun. That's one of my favorites. That and the one where they're answering questions about each other.
Oh,
But
it's one of my Last Gasp is one of my favorites too. I may practice it in the hot tub when nobody's around.
okay, Carson. But like it feels like most of the challenges now, and it's been this way for a while, for a lot of seasons, it feels like it's almost always an obstacle, some version of an obstacle course followed by some sort of puzzle. Like we don't have and this will happen later in Borneo, but we don't have the eating challenges anymore, or like just carrying our raft and lighting stuff on fire. We don't have the variety of challenges we used to.
Always said with both in knowing talking about Borneo and the two challenges that they had that are iconic. The first challenge, Quest for Fire, the last challenge, Hands on Hard Idol. I
Yeah,
wish that would have been the first and last challenge of Winners at War.
yeah. And I've called Last Gasp my favorite one just because I enjoy watching it, but I also my other favorite, and they're probably tied, just for the drama it causes. I love the challenge where you have two people, or they're all like answering questions for each other, or the answer, and then they go chop the rope, which the question already adds drama, but then they're chopping each other's rope. It's great television. 29 kind of broke that challenge, but it'd
And the
be fun to
last
do.
thing I want to ask you before we move into a final segment about episode one is what was your thoughts on the tribal council? I wrote down another neat thing that in the commentary, Rich says, losing the challenge, we knew we were going to tribal. We didn't know what that was. All we knew is that's where we were going.
Yeah. So Sonia gets voted out first, unfortunately, because she seems super nice, but this is kind of not it's still a thing, but not as much as it was back then. Of in the pre-merge, you vote out the people that struggle in challenges because you want to keep the tribe strong, stay away from tribal. Which
Exactly.
I've seen a lot of people online like make fun of that or put air quotes around it if it's possible to air quote while typing. But that's what I'd be doing if I was out there, you know?
Yeah,
It makes sense. You don't want to go to tribal pre-merge if you can keep your numbers together and keep your tribe together in the post-merge.
absolutely. And the Sonia vote too just made sense because I think that was for her. You could tell she was still happy. It was such a big accomplishment for her to get to go out and do it. But at the same time, it's like Rudy says in the commentary that when they jumped off that boat, he knew he's been on worse islands for a longer time in his life and it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't going to die.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you had to pick between Sonia and Rudy, Rudy's bringing you all that experience that he
Yeah,
has from the military.
yeah,
So you can't blame the tribe for their decision. It was interesting though to see Stacy get some votes here, I thought, because you were really seeing that balance between do you want to get rid of the person who might weaken the tribe? Or as some people thought already in the first episode, do you want to get rid of the person who's causing some chaos in the tribe?
yeah. So, and I mean, you can make an argument either way, honestly.
Absolutely.
So,
Anything else you want to add about this episode or that you have for me?
nothing comes to mind. So, with that, we will launch into our third topic, which this is going to be something we do every episode. If you didn't listen to our last episode of the pod, this game is called Allign Blindside First Boot. Maybe we can get some sort of like imaging or something for that to play. But so we'll give each other three names, and we have to pick if we're on a season with this person, who we'd align with and take to the end, who we would vote out first, and who we would blindside, which I always assume is kind of around the merge boot. So knowing we were going to
Take it
be,
as like that person will sit on the jury, but will
yeah,
not go to the end game.
yeah. Time wise, I just kind of always imagine I'm blindsiding them either the first couple boots after the merge. But so coming with the anniversary week and knowing we would be having this awesome discussion we just had, I went with a Borneo theme for my names to give you. And I kind of wanted to go off of the normal script of like the same people you usually see. Because you always see people talk about Rich, Kelly, Sue, Rudy when talking about Borneo. So I'm kind of going to riff away from that a little bit. And so my three names I'm giving you are Dr. Sean Kenneth, really fun character. Jenna Lewis, who really I feel like we see her shine more on her second season than we do on Borneo. And Jervis Peterson.
Really good picks. First of all, I mean, I'm kind of laughing now because we went with the same theme, but we went with some different names, so that's
That's
good.
good. I figured we would probably go with the same theme, but
I mean, it's such a historic moment to be on air, pulling in millions for 23 years straight that you kind of have to have your mind go there.
yeah,
But looking at those three, I am going to ally with Jenna.
yeah,
I think she was both a loyal player, but if you listen to some of the players who were on her original Pagong tribe, she talked a lot and drove them crazy.
which is we've
And
heard
as a
from All
result,
Stars also, by the way.
pardon?
Pretty sure we've heard people that were on the All Stars cast say that same exact thing.
So at this point, I think she might be a great person to take to the end, but also that you could trust going in. Um, as for my blindside Jervis, I could see myself being an ally of Jervis early on. But I mean, in Modern Survivor, when that piece of true mail comes that says that you've had a kid in the middle of the show, that is a jury threat.
Yeah,
Um,
unless you're
you will,
Jeremy and don't tell any and try to keep it hidden because you're afraid of the threat.
yeah, which they did not do.
Yeah,
And then, as per my first boot, this is obviously going to be Dr. Sean. I mean, if you're going to use the tribe's resources and all your time of day building Super Bowl 2000, you got to do an old school Survivor. That's just not being productive.
so my first boot was also Dr. Sean, but it wasn't because he was unproductive around camp. It's because of his voting strategy. Are you still there?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you. Okay, I just wanted to make sure you could hear me. So my first boot is also Dr. Sean, but not for your reasoning of him around camp. It's my initial thought was I can use his alphabet voting strategy to my advantage. Then I realized my name starts with a B, and that's near the beginning of the alphabet. So I have to vote him out while he's still on the A's. Otherwise, I might be in
That's
trouble.
true.
I don't know who else is out there with me.
Or hope that he votes for you first when you're not a target and then won't vote for you till the end of the game.
Yeah. As for the others, I'm think I'd blindside Jervis for the sole reason of I feel like he's less likely to take it hard and hold it against me than Jenna is for whatever reason. And part of this is also me watching Blood versus Water recently, where he's just chill the entire time, other than when Brad Culpepper's around. And then align with Jenna for the reasons you said, which is interesting that we've seen two different casts say she was kind of annoying and talked too much. Because I've seen her say somewhere, and she's also said this to me through Instagram. She firmly believes that if All Stars was a final three, she would have won.
She 100% would have won.
She
She
would
gets
have.
Lex's vote, Kathy's vote, Alicia's vote, Tom's vote, Rupert's vote.
I don't know. I don't know about Kathy. She seems pretty tied to Rob for whatever reason. Like throughout everything. And part of that's they were on their first season together. But
That's
yeah,
possible.
she wins because they were all that bitter towards both Rob and Amber. The
Yeah.
only reason either one of them won is because there wasn't a third option.
That's true. So going into mine, I know we are starting to be short on time. The names that I am going to present to you also going to a Borneo theme. Uh, Richard Hutch, Colleen Haskell, and Greg Buis.
Okay, I thought you were going to give me Rudy as one of the names too, and I wasn't going to sure how to handle having both of them there. But this is interesting. My first instinct, just gut reaction, is to align with Colleen. But I'm not sure I can win that jury vote. She kind of had the girl next door at it and seemed like she had good relationships with everyone. So I don't know if I can win that jury vote. Greg, I don't know. I kind of want to see more of him. I'm first booting Rich because he's the only winner here. So that's kind of my rule for this game usually is if there's only one winner, they go first.
Makes
I don't
sense.
know about the other two though. I guess I'd align with Greg just because Colleen seems like more of a jury threat. What about you?
For me, I agree with you on Colleen that she's absolutely a jury threat, and that's why I'm first
Mm-hmm.
booting her. I am going to align with Greg. Oh, sorry. I am going to blindside Greg. I mean to say, Greg will guaranteed keep the tribe entertained, which in those old school seasons when you're not in a 26-day format with challenges every day, that is one of the most important things you can have on the island is someone just to keep you laughing.
Oh yeah, look at Pearl
And
Islands when Rupert made himself a skirt walking around for all those days.
yeah, exactly. And then, believe it or not, I am going to ally with Rich here
What?
because the reason Rich won is that Sue and Kelly burnt the relationship. Although none of the Pagongs were on the jury were ever going to vote for Rich other than Greg.
Yeah,
So in my mind, I think that if I'm sitting on that jury, you can get votes from the Pagongs and bring Sue back into it or bring Kelly into it, who wouldn't be there, and win the game. Rich, on the other hand, I think a lot of people thought he deserved the win. I don't think Rich is one of those players that you don't necessarily want to vote for. They just felt that he played the best game.
yeah.
Maybe other people could play a better game if I was in that position.
And you just put an interesting thought in my head talking about the Pagongs. And Richard always gets credit, rightfully so, for inventing the strategy of the game and being a mile ahead of everyone. I'm just now realizing Kelly was really ahead of the curve on the from the subject, also ahead of the curve from the subject of she was making bonds and friendships with the minority alliance
She
with the
absolutely was.
Pagong.
That's a great point.
No one else in the Toggy alliance was had anything to do with Pagong. If it felt like, and so
Kelly was absolutely working that with everyone on the island as opposed to just seeing them as disposable numbers. And that was a great part of her game. She
yeah,
would have been Rich won. He deserved the win, but she would have been a great first winner as well.
it's a win for the fans either way, honestly.
Mhm.
Okay, and with that, we have gone through all of our subjects and running low on time, so that concludes our tribal council. Our torches are not snuffed, though. We will be back next week. And until then, I am Bruce Heller.
Cornell, keep
And
your fire.
thank you for joining us.